So we just had some news come out from Matt Schneidman here on Twitter. It says Packers released Anders Carlson per source. Now, I'm honestly pretty surprised about this one. Not because I don't think that Anders has clearly struggled during his time in the NFL. Very inconsistent last year. Pretty inconsistent during training camp. I think the thing that ended it for him was missing that 32-yarder in the last preseason game because he'd been playing well in the past week or so. But then to miss a 32-yarder, that had to make the Packers think twice. I did have the Packers keeping Anders Carlson as their kicker in my 53-man roster prediction. And the reason why I thought they would stick with him was, you look at last year, you look at the inconsistency he had. They stuck with him through all of it. Now, that was his rookie season, and they did spend a 6th-round draft pick on Anders. So I expected them to hold on maybe a little longer than people had, liked. Just because when you draft a kicker, it sort of, looks bad on you when you have to move on from him because it shows that you clearly did not make the right assessment and the right prediction when you drafted him in the 6th round of the NFL draft. And so I thought they would hold on a little longer just because Greg Joseph had not yet really surpassed Anders if you look at the overall field goal percentage during training camp. But it looks like the Packers have finally decided that they have seen enough. They've seen enough, to start the offseason. They bring in Greg Joseph as the veteran presence, clearly indicating that they knew there was some kind of issue with Anders. They knew that he was inconsistent during his rookie season. And I think at that point this offseason, they were still holding on to that hope that maybe throughout the offseason, switching things up, he could find some consistency and, maybe having Greg Joseph there, Anders could develop and with that competition sort of live up to the expectations that, they had for him when they drafted him in the 6th round. And now they have moved on from him. And I think just from from my perspective, I think this is probably the right move. I was just wondering, what would they do to fill the hole if they did release Anders? Maybe they stick with Greg Joseph. Maybe they'll decide to pick up another kicker if someone else releases him. We'll keep an eye on that one for the rest of the day. But there is no doubt, if it was going to be Anders Carlson going into the year, I was going to be nervous. I just was thinking that they would continue to hold on maybe too long just because they drafted him. But now they've officially decided to move on from Anders Carlson. And it makes you wonder, when they drafted him, there were some, when you looked at his college stats, he was pretty inconsistent. And I remember Brian Gutekunst and some of the Packers staff talking about how they believe that he could get to a place where he was a successful kicker. Of course, that's why they drafted him. He dealt with some injuries in college. I think they believed that they could get him to the place where he could become more consistent. I remember his brother had been in the NFL is in the NFL, and early in his career struggled a little bit, figured things out. Rich Bisaccia, Packers special teams coordinator, had been with his brother. And so I think they trusted Anders as a person and his ability, mentally and how he would work and things like that. And I think they believe that they could get him to a place to be successful. And that just, wasn't the case. They could not get him to be consistent. And in hindsight, it's easy to say, okay, well, you could have looked at his college stats. I think he had about a 71% field goal percentage, which is not good. He has been a little better in the NFL. It was around 80% last year. It was about 80 to, I think maybe 82-ish% this training camp preseason period. But it's not enough in the NFL. Last year, the average kicker was around 85%. And so Anders was around, I think he was like 25th in the NFL in field goal percentage last year. And the issue with Anders Carlson, his kicking is he's just so wildly inconsistent, not only from like deep, like 40-plus or 50-plus, but, missing extra points. I believe he missed 5 extra points last year, which was the most in the NFL. You also look at that 32-yarder missed. It's like you at least need your kicker to be pretty much automatic when it comes to a 32-yard field goal. And so I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that final kick for him missing that 32-yarder sort of sealed it for the Packers because he had been really consistent, and all of a sudden you miss a 32-yarder. I mean, that gives you some worry if you're Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM, because he could, let's say Anders finished the year this year really on a hot streak, 10 for 10, the final few games, and then let's say the Packers have a playoff game, there's a 32-yard field goal to end the game, and he just shanks it because I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if it's I just don't know what the issue is to miss a 32-yard field goal in the NFL. And it's tough because Anders seems like a great guy, and you never like to see a guy get released. It's just the unfortunate reality of the NFL. And so I'm pretty surprised the Packers actually decided to pull the plug. They made the wrong move deciding to draft him. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. They couldn't get him to be a consistent kicker. They decided to release him. And now the question is, who is going to be this Packers kicker? Maybe it's Greg Joseph. Obviously, just looking at the roster now, he hasn't been released, at least up to this point that I'm recording this video. That could change because lots of players right now around the NFL are getting released. And we'll keep an eye on the other kickers released from other teams because there could be someone else out there that could come in and be signed here to the Packers. The thing is, Greg Joseph was worse than Anders Carlson in the training camp period. I'm not sure if you looked at like 30-yard field goals, who was more consistent. I haven't seen those kind of stats from training camp or preseason. And it could be that Greg Joseph is more reliable when it comes to short yard field goals. Maybe it's just the longer ones that he struggles with. And so we'll see if they decide to stick with Greg Joseph. If they do, I'm like, it's not great. It's just not a great situation, honestly, Anders or Greg Joseph, based on what we saw from this preseason training camp period. Also last year, Greg Joseph was worse when it came to field goal percentage than Anders Carlson. So I would almost like if the Packers could find someone else out there who could come in that they were confident in. I'm honestly not too sure of the landscape of kickers who are going to be released out there, but we'll sort of keep an eye on that and see what the Packers' plan here is. And so Anders Carlson was supposed to come in and be the Mason Crosby replacement, and unfortunately, it has not worked out. But if you want But if you would like more Packers content, you can follow me on Twitter, LukeBeller3. You can also subscribe to this channel so you never miss any Packers news, and I'll see you guys next time.